Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Labco Fitness podcast. It has been a super long while. I don't know when the last podcast was, probably like a year ago.
I don't know. It's been a really long time.
Yeah, with me we have Joshua Nademan, and we have a lot of catching up to do. So this is a special episode, and this is also an episode where I'm going to announce that we're going to do more podcasts.
Yay.
We used to do once a month AMA podcasts, but we're kind of sort of mixing that with every now and then we'll have podcasts talking about certain subjects. We're going to have guests on our podcast. I'm not going to tell who first because Joshua doesn't even know, but we're going to have guests and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Sweet.
And Cole's even going to join some of these podcasts.
Oh, awesome.
So,
hell yeah.
Well, we're going to have the third co-founder. Yeah, we're going to have Cole on there. So the podcast series is going to be a whole thing. So it's going to be super cool.
I'm excited. That's really great.
Yeah,
and that's good. It's good to get more. It's good to get more inputs than just from the two of us. I think that it makes things a little more alive, and then it's just more interesting. And I think that's really important. You don't want to get bored.
No, totally. So in this episode, what we're going to do is, first off, some catching up. We're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the world. COVID. Okay. We're going to talk about training.
Yeah.
Your life, how your life is going. Yeah. What happened to LabCoat? In this, we released an app and everything, and we're going to answer some of your questions if we have enough time. So if we don't, we're going to have a separate AMA podcast later. So don't worry, your questions will be answered at some time. But first, let's get to let's start with the first subject. I had COVID.
Yeah.
And I got pretty damn ill.
Yeah.
Let me give a little bit of context of what happened. I started my medicine again, and so I'm doing my internal medicines right now in Tilburg, and I'm in my 8th week right now, and around week 4. I got infected with COVID, and that shit happens if you're not working in a hospital in a city where a lot of people are infected. There's a very high likelihood of that happening, even if you're really protected. Sometimes shit happens, and you get it. And
one of the tricky things is that what the data shows is that about half of it's not half of hospital workers, but of the hospital workers who get COVID, about half of them are asymptomatic. So you really don't know what your exposures are,
Right. Now this is true. And this is,
and hospital workers right now, Medscape just had a new article that 1 in 6 cases, so about 17 point something% or 18% or whatever is, are healthcare workers or their families.
Really?
So when you realize that we're a much smaller percentage of the population than that, that's a significant thing. It's people who work in the hospital are a relatively small. I don't know how small I think there's more. I don't know my numbers on the split between inpatient and outpatient docs, but I believe there's quite a lot more outpatient than inpatient, and And so in the hospital, you have more frequent patient contact with people who are sicker and come in with less history, meaning that you don't know as much about them. So, there's a lot more opportunity for things to happen. So it's a higher risk environment than people think. And this will be fun because we'll get into some things, I think, at some point during this story to talk about, what really helps keep that risk down, because there's
that'll probably be in the end of the story.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm going to shut up and eat strawberries now.
You enjoy strawberries. I got COVID, and I started doing a little cough, every 2-3 hours. It would do that was it. That was my only symptom. And so, I got a little bit suspicious because I noticed one of my coworkers had the same thing, but slightly more frequent. And then on the Friday, this was one day after I realized I was doing this for 2 days, I noticed in the morning that my throat was a little bit sore. So I was like, you know what? this suffices to the criteria of getting yourself tested. So I got myself tested. 5 hours later, or 6 hours later, I got the results, and I was positive, which I did not expect at all because I wasn't showing many symptoms. And then a few hours after that, I started getting a fever, and I got, it went really fast. I got really ill, and I had to go in bed, and I had to stay there because I couldn't get out of my bed. I was so tired. I was so feverish. And the next day, I remember I just couldn't get my body warm. I had 3-4 layers of clothing on, and I was still shaking, and I had the heat maxed. I was like, what's going on? I'm dying here. Yeah, and man. I went to the shower, and I basically cranked the shower up, and it was finally working. But I look at my hands and my fingers, everything except my thumbs, they were white, completely white. And it was like a very clear, you could clearly see that my palm was red, but my fingers was completely white. It was like, it's a very harsh boundary between those two. And I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, oh shit. Okay. I've never seen this in real life, but now I get to see it on myself.
Yeah, it's trippy.
So while I was in the shower, I was like, okay, whatever. So I just did my shower thing, and I got out of the shower. And the first thing I did is I took an NSAID, and 2-3 hours later, all my symptoms disappeared. Like I was feeling like the man. And then I was like, wait, that was it? One day? And then a few hours later, I didn't take any NSAIDs after that. I was like,
nope.
Oh, because I heard a lot of stories of people recovering after a day or so. So I didn't take any NSAIDs after that. And the day after, I was super ill again. Then I took some aspirin, felt good again, waited again, got very ill again. And so that was sort of my thing. I lost my smell around day 9 and my taste also around day 9, which was really bad because that was the first day I ordered out. I got my favorite, I got my favorite meal. I got like,
dude, COVID trolled you really hard.
Dude, I got piri chicken. I get this dish like once every 2 months, because I appreciate it so much. So it's like, okay. So I got it. My sister-in-law got it to my house, and I started smelling. I was like, why can't I smell this? This usually smells great. And I started eating it. The only thing I could taste was the salt. It's like, wait, but what about the other tastes? So I was eating, and I was so confused. So I took some perfume, and I put it on my elbows. I was like, I can't smell this. Nothing. It was so weird, man.
Yeah, I want to stop here for just a second because people wonder how the fuck this works, right? So there's something called molecular mimicry. This is an emerging area of research on COVID, but it's an extremely well-known phenomenon in infectious disease in general. And we do know that there are, amongst other things, there is molecular mimicry that seems to cause targeting of the olfactory nerve endings. Yeah. So basically it just blocks the sensors. And we think that that's actually a big part of why there is multi-organ damage in so many people, because even when they don't notice it, like when we went and we actually, and I say we, it's not like my institution, but the data that we have actually shows that somewhere around 3 out of every 10 people who are asymptomatic still show signs of heart damage, and it seems to be temporary. It's kind of like a stress picture rather than a it's like no, as far as we know, anyways, there's no like long-term scarring.
What do you mean with heart damage? How do they?
They show EKG abnormalities.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And they show that they did not have before, and that's really important to understand. Like we don't see this with really other illnesses. Like you don't see stuff like this with the flu so much and things like that. They have signs of mild heart inflammation, basically, and
interesting.
And it lasts for like a couple of months sometimes. And then for the majority of people, it seems to self-resolve. But there's a couple of college basketball. There's at least one I know that specifically is known to have died very specifically from just acute heart failure that happened as a result of this, basically. And, these are young, healthy people. And so, I
think that's one of the most important things to sort of explain is a lot of people think
There's a lot of
oh,
misinformation
I'm not,
in both directions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're less likely to get these complications if you're younger.
No.
But
You're less likely to have. You're less likely
the
to
respiratory.
notice. You're right. Yeah. So if you're not a smoker and you don't have chronic lung disease of some sort, meaning asthma or COPD, any, we're not going to get into like a physiology class on lung disease.
No.
But you know what? But for people who are curious, just look up lung diseases. If you have a lung disease or disease that affects your lungs. And by the way, that can include rheumatoid arthritis, things like that. Then, or if you're on methotrexate for like inflammatory bowel disease, stuff like that. There's a very small chance that potentially, this is a theoretical thing. This is very reaching. There's a lot we don't know. So don't stop taking your meds. Just wear your mask, wear eye protection, and wash your hands, and you'll be fine. And then we'll talk more about that in the end. But there were actually, it's a very pervasive thing. People do not understand that there is a significant inflammatory syndrome that lasts for many weeks, not like 2 or 3 weeks, like 8 to 12 weeks after infection. And a lot of people don't really notice it, and some people do. Some people just notice mild fatigue for a while. Some people it's more severe. Some people have extreme exercise intolerance that slowly resolves over a couple of months. I mean, that happened to my ex. Like because she's in Sweden, and she was just telling me about that a couple of months ago. And she doesn't have a positive test because she got sick before there was really widespread availability, and and then she was doing better. And what people don't realize is that the antibodies that we develop, if you're asymptomatic, like basically if you're not sick enough to really think, oh, I definitely have COVID, then your antibodies really go away after like 2-3 months. And then even if you're really sick, they typically go away by the 6-month mark. And even if you're really sick, we have documented evidence now that, and we've known this for a while, but it really wasn't paid attention to because there was no high quality evidence. It was just communication within the medical field, but like from provider to provider, basically. But, as little as 2 months after an initial infection, we know you can get sick again from COVID. And we don't know if that is going to make things worse in the long term, So there's, the first thing is like there's a lot of unknowns. And the one thing that we really do know is how not to get sick. And again, we're going to continue teasing with that for a little bit because I want you to pay attention, listen to the rest of what Yaad says, and understand that, we really don't know enough to say a whole lot about a whole lot with COVID, but what we do know, I can put out there. Yeah.
But something that I think you and I can sort of contribute to is exercising and having had COVID or any sort of disease. I think that's very interesting. People who are listening and have had COVID or have COVID now or have a high chance of getting COVID, they probably wonder, hey, what should I do with my training? Should I continue training? Should I stop training? And how should I get back to training? I think that's something that you and I could probably, sort of help people with. The thing what happened to me, I got pretty ill, so I just couldn't train for a week or two. I hadn't lost a lot of strength. And when I say that, I primarily mean short holds, short bursts of movements. But I did notice immediately after having had it that I was more likely to get injured. Sometimes you just feel that. You're like, my movement patterns aren't the way I'm not moving the way I'm supposed to move. Like it's not going as well, even though I don't feel weaker. It's not moving as well. And surely enough, after I haven't had an injury for a year, and I don't really consider this an injury, but my shoulder is not doing as good in planche push-ups, so I stay away from that for a little bit. But movements that did hit me really hard are anything above 10 reps or anything that you hold above 20 seconds. That just dropped immediately for me. That was For example, I was doing around 49-second front levers. Now
Mhm.
I was struggling with 30. I was like, holy, this is hard. But what about training now? Right now, I'm still recovering. I know
Right.
it's been 2 weeks since I got out of quarantine, and I'm not showing any symptoms, but I still have post COVID fatigue, which is a thing. You know, it makes you very tired. I am very tired. But again, it doesn't have any impact on my short burst movements, but my long burst or just having long workouts, I can't do much of what I'm doing.
The more that you depend on your cardiovascular system, the more compromised it's going to be. So like a 1 rep max, not really going to be affected, but you know, people don't realize that even a 10-second effort has a significant cardiovascular component.
No, yeah. And another thing, a 1 rep max, sure, you can do that, but you can't do it as much now after this. So I can't do like multiple sets.
Anyway. Yeah.
No, I know. Okay, but let's say you're doing like a 1 rep 90 or 95% one or whatever. Reese,
come here, boy.
I haven't seen Reese.
Hi.
Oh my God, he's walking.
Oh, he's running. He's like, hi, big man. I like your pajamas. He's standing on my leg now. He's like, here, stand. He just want to hang out. Yeah.
Hey, Reese.
He got the family forearms. He's so thick, like it's crazy. He's just a little brick. Like there's really like there's almost no baby fat on him. He's got huge quads. It's ridiculous. I can honestly say that I have not seen another kid in clinic in these 3 years so far that looks like the build that he has. It's very unusual.
Has he started doing push-ups?
You saw that video that I put on the
yeah, I did.
Yeah. Yeah, huh? Oh, you want? Oh God, he sees my protein shake he knows. Okay. All right, this is actually just kefir, okay? You like that though. He likes yogurt and kefir and stuff like that. So we share.
He likes gains. He's like,
Yeah. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff, huh? Do you have anything? You don't want that. There's hot peppers over there. He's like reaching for my Subway sandwich, and I got like the veggie sandwich with like literally just give me everything you got. So it's got like the sweet peppers and the hot peppers and pickles and like every vegetable there and no sauces, which is what I like personally. I'm not a big, I like a lot of sauces, but I don't like sauces on sandwiches usually.
I'm the same. It's weird. I like, eating finger food with sauces, but I don't like having it in sandwiches or something. I don't know.
You want more? Mm-hmm. Nothing? All done? Yay! He knows he knows a lot of sign language stuff.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
that's so cool.
So see the computer mouse. Don't go clicking things. You might end up.
You might end up the podcast. Come on. Come on, kid.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of random things in life, this is a big part of life now.
Yeah, that's something that happened to Josh. I mean, last podcast you also had Reese, but Reese didn't look like that. Reese didn't look like that.
He's so mobile now, like it's crazy, and he figures stuff out really quick, and like all kids do, like we all say that every parent thinks their kid's a freaking genius because like kids are smart. They're built to just explore and learn, and they also have absolutely no common sense whatsoever. And like he was really good about stuff early on, I'd say, for like the first year, 14 months, but now like he's into everything. So, you really have to be careful, and like you can be lulled into a false sense of security. So
I'm noticing he's like trying to do things. You're like, nope.
Hop down. There you go. Explore. You gonna go dig in the onion bed? No? Why not? Any ideas? Do you have anything you want to say to the Lab Coat audience?
Woo. He pleads the fifth.
He does. He pled the fifth.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, in the I forget the exact wording of the Fifth Amendment because I'm not like a walking constitutional memory bank, but essentially it is protection against it allows for protection against self-incrimination, and so you do not have to answer a question in court if you can say I plead the fifth, essentially, and that you feel like your answer will be used against you in a way that just can't be predicted for, and or the that's essentially what that means.
Yeah,
when I plead the fifth.
Right.
And
So,
somebody's going to
Josh.
correct on there. Again, like I am not in constitution mode. I have to brush up on that before I really talk
Yeah.
about it. So
Let's just not talk about it. Well, Josh. So let's say someone just got COVID, and he has a question like, "Hey, Dr. Josh, what do I do on my training? What should I do?"
not much.
What do you tell him?
Not much. The problem is that we don't know anything about how your body is reacting to it. You can, so here's one of the things that people really don't understand. What they don't understand is that if you are a highly trained individual, if you're really fit, then your body can have a lot of damage without you really noticing. So the fact that you don't feel it does not mean that you don't have damage. In fact, people who are really highly fit, like there's a fair number of like marathon runners who have died in the ICU because by the time they feel sick enough to come to the hospital, they've had a huge amount of damage. Now, you have to realize that the things that they do for fun would make most of us, get like rhabdo if we tried to do it, in terms of how much they're able to run and for how long. Like we might not have to go to the hospital for it, but we'd be sore for, over a week. We'd be exhausted. We'd be throwing up and unable to keep up. And that's just on like a training run for them, not even a race pace. So, and they can do that, 5-6 days a week, no problem. So their cardiovascular fitness is so extraordinarily good that by the time they feel that they have difficulty breathing, they're in serious trouble. That's like a normal person already being in the ICU sometimes. And and that's a real scary thing. That's why you have to, the more fit you are, I think that even minor, signs of illness, you really have to pay attention to, because if you're one of those people who have, you just are going to, and there's no way to predict this, but some people just get really sick and we don't know why yet. And you don't know if it's you. Most people believe that it's not them, and most people are right, but that's just a numbers game. It's not that you actually knew anything, because the knowledge doesn't exist. So it's basically a faith-based, oh God, I just hope that I'm not going to get sick. And, but people don't realize that that's what they're saying. They just think that they're invincible, or that, oh, this is just like another flu or something like that. And that's kind of an ignorant statement. It's not the end of the world, but it is still potentially really serious. And so you really have to pay attention to how you feel, and you really need to limit what you do to what doesn't make you start feeling worse, not just not just afterwards, but during. If that means that you can only do 3 reps of something instead of 10, that's what you do. Your goal is just to not hurt yourself while your body recovers. I mean, that's basically it.
So should you do some training then?
While you're ill,
on your condition.
I don't think so. No.
Right. Right. I was about to say.
After your fevers have been gone for a couple of days, then I think that you're okay to start. But I mean, I would start with just walking and just a couple of like 1 or 2 reps of, kind of a medium weight for yourself. And just really take that time to sort of explore what is okay and keep the volume really low. You should be focused on perhaps not even maintenance volumes. Like, just something so that you feel like you're doing something for yourself. It's actually, in a way, it's more about your mental health than your physical health early on, because when you're real strong, people tend to be afraid of losing things. They don't understand that it's not going to happen, So your focus has to be on protecting yourself from your own overconfidence.
Right.
Yeah.
So now
that
let's
doesn't
get to
take too long.
Yeah. Now let's talk about how can we prevent getting COVID? Like, how do we protect ourselves the best way?
Yeah, I mean, the best way is to have the mindset that the world is full of snotty 5-year-olds.
Right.
You know, they have no manners. Like sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. They're kind of unpredictable. You don't really know who's going to just run up, say hi, and then sneeze in your face. You don't know what they've gotten snot on, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, they're just people. So they're little crazy people. That's kind of how you want to look at the world, is that you don't know who's done what. So wash your hands if you touch stuff that doesn't belong to you before you touch your face. One of the best, you know, and I think that, you know, the things that protect you are hand hygiene, wearing your mask when you're around people that, you know, don't live with you, and then wearing eye protection, whether that's sunglasses or goggles or a face shield. You know, in general public, I think the face shield's a massive overkill. I think that for you know, like in retail now, everybody seems to have these plexiglass shields so that you don't need a face shield behind that. It's a big one. You know, but when you don't have a barrier between you and other people, I mean, having something between your eyes and their mouth is a good idea. And so here's the reason for that.
Yeah.
Your eyes, tears start here at the outside corner of your eye. That's where your tear ducts are. That's where the liquid comes from. That's what all the moisture in your eye comes from, you know, on the surface that keeps it from drying out and stuff. And then that drains in this inner corner, that inner canthus, there's a tube that goes back into the back of your throat. So your eye is connected to your throat, which is connected to your lungs. It's connected to your nose and your throat. So it's your eye. If somebody coughs and it gets in your eye, then you're going to get COVID if that cough had COVID in it. It's just the way that it works. And we actually know this from emergency room data in, I believe it was Australia, where they compared the infection rates in the emergency department before and after mandating face mask usage for all patient encounters, regardless of symptomatology or history. And what they found is that before implementing the eye protection and the face shield, and we'll talk about why the face shield's good in the emergency department or in the hospital, but protecting the eyes took the infection rate from like a 30% chance of getting COVID over, I forget what period the study was, to like 1% or less. And so when you do the math on that, that's like an over 90% reduction in risk. And, you know, like the mask is great. It reduces things a lot because you're not breathing in as many viral particles, but that only covers 2 of the 3 entry points to your respiratory tract. And, you know, that's why the eye protection really makes a big difference. And in the hospital, the face shield is good for 2 reasons. It covers your mask. So even if somebody is coughing and like the droplets are there and whatever, it gets on the shield, but it doesn't really get much on your mask. And we've actually shown this to be true, which is why you go into the room, you gown up, you have your face shield and everything. And then when you leave, you get your gown off, you ball it up inside out, you pull the gloves off, you throw it off. And then the first thing you do is you wash your hands with soap and water while you're still inside the room. And then you open the door and you step outside, and then you like wash your hands again. Typically with like a hand sanitizer, because that's just what happens to be convenient outside the room. And then with your like thumbs, you just pull that face shield off and you hand it to somebody else, or you put it down somewhere where nobody's going to touch it, so that you can wash your hands. And then typically where we're at, you know, if you wore the face shield, you can put your, well, I'm not going to get into the mask types right now, but anyways, I don't know what you want, buddy. Here. You can have it. I don't know what you want in it, though. I mean, I don't have. And then when you have the masks, that basically protects your mouth and your nose. Your eyes are protected by the shield, and then the shield protects your mask so that when you're taking the mask off to exchange it, you're not as likely to contaminate yourself. That's in fact, in asymptomatic rooms, you don't even have to change your mask out. In a symptomatic room, no matter what you're wearing, you always get a new mask. The only exception to that is like if you have an N95, then we have paper bags that have my name on it. And for that day, I may use that N95, which is only if somebody, the only time you need that in the hospital is if somebody is on a nasal cannula or if they're getting a nebulizer or something like that, because those things aerosolize. The other thing, and this is something that in the holiday season, people should know, the other way that things can get aerosolized is by vocal cord vibrations. And the louder and the longer you speak, the more of that's going on. And really the sustained vibrations with louder, like singing basically, is known to be a significant aerosolizing event. And so you don't want to be like the super spreader events all happen in enclosed areas where people are, where it's noisy and people are like shouting at each other, like parties and things like that. You tend to speak louder because more people are talking, and that puts more virus out into the air. It's not something special about the people. It's really more that, there were risk factors that most of us, including myself, really weren't thinking about. And knowing that really makes it a lot easier to not be stupid. You know what I mean? Because
one thing,
that's where like knowledge is power. So to kind of sum it up, wash your hands, keep your mouth and your nose and your eyes covered, and don't shout or sing near other people, and don't be near other people who are doing those things because, if you can help it. And that's really it. You don't have to be a hermit. You can be out. You can be outside and like talking and just like chilling and whatever. And, the other thing that people probably wonder is, well, what about the gym? So this,
that's a big one.
This really depends on what kind of gym you're going to. CrossFit gyms are, I'm sorry to start with CrossFit. CrossFit, if you're offended, I don't know, go get some Kleenex. They're lower budget facilities. And look, I think that done with, reasonable programming and exercise selection, CrossFit is a wonderful thing. And it's certainly done more for the fitness of the general public than any single thing probably that I know of. I mean, really, honestly, people love it. It's fun. It creates a community.
High compliance. And it's a great sport. It's amazing sport.
Yeah, because it has community. That's the thing, is that it's a place with community where people are working and suffering together, and that bonds people in a way that most people have forgotten about. And, that used to be a part of daily tribal life, but most of us are not living in a tribal community anymore. So it has recreated that. And there's good and bad that comes with it. And the good thing is doing things well. The bad thing is that these gyms are typically in warehouse spaces, and they do not have ACSM compliant ventilation. In other words, when you have a fitness facility that is, certified for like public use, so to speak. I have to look up the definitions for this, but there are guidelines that you have to follow. So like the YMCA, all the fitness gyms, things like this, if somebody gets a heat injury in there, the first thing they're all going to look at is, was the temperature maintained between 69 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit at all times? So that takes a lot of ventilation to do. Because you're expecting that a certain number of people are going to be in that facility, say 100 people at a time or whatever. Well, bodies make heat, and so if there's not a lot of air circulation going through there, then that room's going to get filled up, and it has to be able to maintain those temperature boundaries really at max capacity. That's what the ventilation's built for in those facilities. CrossFit gyms open the door and have big fans blowing from back to front. They're not air conditioned typically because that's really expensive. And the way that these bigger gyms make their money is that most of the members don't actually show up most of the time. If they did, they wouldn't be able to stay open because it's just not enough space for everybody. You know, you talk about a gym with 200 machines has 6,000 members. Imagine if everybody showed up every day. I mean, it's not like people are going to come in at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. They're all at work. So they're all going to be there from like, you know, 4 to 8 at night or like, you know, 5 to 8 in the morning, something like that. That's not going to work.
So what should we do? What do those people do?
The point is that you just have to be aware of how good the ventilation is. In regular gyms, you're totally fine. In the CrossFit gyms, as long as there's like, we'd have to really, it's hard to give guidelines for that kind of environment because you really have to do some calculations on how droplets spread through that environment. As long as there's a lot of airflow, that's really the big thing. As long as there's a lot of airflow, not just inside, but from inside to out, like flushing the room with new air, then you're probably fine. But the exercise environment is inherently more, more risky when people are close together because people are breathing harder.
So
you know what I mean?
Talk about
so it's better than caroling. You're definitely more safe than a gym than you are in choir, which may sound weird, but by like a lot, probably by an order of magnitude. If I was to guess, it's like probably 10 times safer at least.
So let's talk about. Say,
wipe the bars before you use them.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a structured manner. Let's say I just get in the gym. Let's say this is a commercial gym and I'm about to bench press. What should I do? Like, how should I approach the bench? Go through all the steps with me.
First, pray to God. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. That's not going to help. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not going to clean the bench for you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's where we start. Clean the bench. Wipe the things that you're going to touch with some kind of a sanitizing wipe. The gyms are typically providing these now.
They are, yeah.
Right. It's kind of a mandated thing because none of them want to get that lawsuit, you know, so it's cheaper for them to provide these things. And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be some like weird medical purple or red container or something. It can just be like a 10% bleach spray. And, you know, you spray it on, you wipe it. You make sure the surface stays moist for ideally at least a minute. Technically, the specs are that, you know, depending on what the chemicals are, it needs to be a certain amount of time. But the biggest thing is when you get it wet and you wipe it, you're lifting up the things. You're literally wiping whatever virus is there off. And that's the most important thing to understand. It's like when you wash your hands, you're not actually killing very many things, but they're gone. They're not on your hands anymore. If they're alive in the sewer, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Right. Other things in the sewer are going to kill them. They're going to degrade. It doesn't matter. So the key is the wiping, is the cleansing of the surface. And that's really what matters. So you wipe the surface and you wipe the bar. And honestly, you should wipe the weight plates. The alternative to wiping the weight plates is just using a pair of gloves to load and unload the bar. You know, because then you can just load everything up and then just like wipe your gloves and then take them off.
Well, you know? What about just why not clean your hands in between sets?
You could, but if you're the only person using the bar, why should you do that? You know?
Oh, I mean, well, not in between. I mean, like when you get there, you put the plates on and then you clean your hands and then you bench press.
Yeah.
And then and when you take it off, you clean your hands again. What about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's another good option. And so the key is to make sure that you have cleaned your hands before there's any chance of you touching your face, and do not trust yourself. Yeah. As soon as you have touched anything, once you're done touching shit in the gym, like once you're done loading the bars, just, do a quick hand sanitizing. And the cool side effect of that is that it's actually going to remove oil from your skin. Your grip's going to be better. Like
you heard it here first. You don't need any chalk. Just clean your hands.
No. So I'm so glad you mentioned that because I was actually going to talk about, there are studies on this. And when you look at hydrated, demoliated skin, meaning that you wash your hands with a soap that has no lotion in it. So all the oil's off your hand. The coefficient of friction between your hand and the bar is actually higher than anything you can accomplish with chalk or anything else, basically.
Look at that.
Yeah. So and
the gym owners won't get mad at you. So this is great.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the great thing is that, and so then you're like, yeah, but what about sweat, bro? There's wristbands. Tennis players have been using those for fucking decades because they don't want the racket to fly out of their hand.
Wait, so do you transpire from your palms?
Not everybody. Some people do.
I do. I was about to say, I really
some people
do.
do. I do not.
Yeah, okay. I do a lot. That's sort of my thing. I hate it.
Yeah,
But
and that's cool though. Like, so if you do, then just like dry your hands. I mean, it's not that hard.
yeah. No, cool. Okay, but that's awesome. Let's talk about something else. We just covered COVID, but a lot more happened in our lives. Well, I already mentioned it. I started medicine again. My life is a lot more busy than it used to be.
Yeah.
Basically 45 hours in a hospital, which is not as much as what you had, Josh, but still,
No.
it's still a lot for me. So it's 45 hours and then some self-studying, of course. And of course,
that's
lab
the thing.
code.
People don't understand that work hours does not include learning about your patients. It does not include studying. It does not include logging your patients. It does not include a lot of things that you have to do.
Yeah.
It's only your patient time.
You're not done when you're out of the hospital.
Right.
You're supposed to do more stuff.
Right, so exactly.
Presentations, you'll be surprised. Doctors give a lot of presentations,
Yes, they do.
So that's
especially in academic environments.
Yes. So, my days are really busy. Training wise, I was doing really well. I was surprised that I was actually making still decent gains because I planned around it. I made sure that my weekends are full with workouts, and during the week I had 2 workout days.
Right.
So it was basically Friday too. So it was Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. These were my workout days, and I made it work.
Right.
But life is busy. I'm not gonna lie. It's a lot more busy than it used to be, and that's what's going on with my life now. In the meantime, from between this podcast and the previous one, Lab Code has undergone a lot of changes. We have an app now, which in between that time I learned programming, wrote the app based on our spreadsheets and our programming and everything. And that's out there. So if you're just a listener and you've never actually went to our website, just go to www.labcofitness.com, check it out. And if you like it, then, sign up for it. And if you don't, then just keep listening to the podcast because we'll always have this going on. I know we've been gone for a while, but
and the app is really not even fully started. Like, it's functional and it works and it's good, but we're on like phase 1 of like at least 15. And, these things are, no development's ever really over, but we haven't even begun to show what's coming. It just has to be done one step at a time. You can only do things so fast. It takes time to find bugs. And then, the app's not the only thing that we're doing. So, yeah.
And because I got a bit too ambitious, I was like, I'm just going to keep working on these apps during medicine and everything. It will prove to be a bit harder than I thought, especially because of COVID, I have to do a lot of catching up to do in these the coming few weeks. So a bit more busy than I had planned, but there's cool stuff coming. There's also a web app variation coming. So if you like working on bigger screens, the app will be available on bigger screens too soon. Great. I won't come up with a date yet, but soon. A lot of stuff is coming, basically.
Good.
And Joshua also had a lot of stuff happened. Reese got bigger. What else happened, Josh?
Let's see. Reese is getting bigger.
You training again?
Yeah, I started training a little bit. It's been, I think this is my, I guess technically end of 3rd week, beginning of 4th week, I guess. I don't know.
What are you running? What kind of program are you running?
I don't know that I would even call it a program. I mean, I'm doing right now like 2 days a week. I'm doing push-ups and pull-ups. Excuse me. 1 to 2 days a week, I'm doing some squats and deadlifts, and then I'm doing a little bit of stretching, and that's about it.
Okay.
I'm stretching.
How does that feel?
I'm stretching 1 to 3 times a week. It feels great.
How does it? Yeah.
And I just jump roped for 3 whole minutes on Wednesday, which this is Saturday now. So,
are you doing some workouts today?
Yeah, today is actually going to be another push-up and pull-up day. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
A lot of times what ends up happening, I call it a day, but really it's kind of like I have, I do pull-ups twice a week. I do push-ups twice a week. I try to do squats once or twice a week, and I do the deadlifts once or twice a week-ish. I'm not as worried about the leg stuff. You know, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that my biggest focus now is just feeling good. You know, I have like from 11 to 4:30, the inside of my labrum is peeled away from the bone. And I just happen to be lucky that one of the weird people that has the bicep tendon does not need the labrum. It actually attaches directly to the bone above the labrum.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I didn't know that till I saw the MRIs. And then I was like, oh, well, that's pretty fucking lucky right there.
Let's go, dude. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. There's always anatomical variations. There's some people, there's some people actually where part of this part of the bicep tendon actually attaches to the coracoid process and then comes up to the acromion. Like there's some weird shit out there. And nobody really knows what a lot of it means because nobody's really built like working mechanical models of it. But people, the most common variations in normal anatomy are only like 40% prevalence. So
right.
We're much more different from each other than people think when it comes to like the small things about like how far from, the joint is your muscle attachment? Is your bicep really a bicep? Is there like a few small accessory heads? Who knows? I mean, there's so many, and the list goes on. Like, does your serratus anterior have like one muscle belly or is it technically separated into two? Not everybody's the same that way. And it's just a lot. It's not even worth thinking about. It's just worth knowing that there's a reason why you can have a standard protocol for learning how to do something well, but there's really no such thing as a true standard setup form. Like you can't say your feet should always be shoulder and a half width and turned out 15 degrees. That's bullshit. Because everybody's hips are very different. Both hips are not always the same, so the more the more you realize that, we want to avoid grinding inside the joint in a joint that's not designed for it. Like the shoulder and the hips are ball sockets, so they can kind of do whatever they want. But, your knees are not designed for rotation. They do have some rotation in there, but it's not something that you really want to emphasize under, especially under high force conditions. So, that's how you start. And I can show with the skeleton better over in the gym where, a small change makes a huge difference in PSI, which makes a huge difference in degeneration in the joint. And, what happens once isn't important. What happens 3 times a week for 20 years is really important. Right, that's kind of the perspective, So there are guidelines to find good exercise form for yourself, but everybody's going to look a bit different from many other people. And that's something that's really important. That's why you shouldn't copy your favorite deadlifter or your favorite squatter or, like Yaad when he's doing his planches. You don't know that your hands need to be the same place his does. What you need to do is find out where you're strong and stable.
So let me ask you a question. One thing I want to do with these podcasts is sort of keep you on track by
that's a challenge. I know.
Yeah.
Especially when we're off the cuff.
Right.
If I have a timeline ish, like if I know what we're gonna do, then it'll be easier. But
well, basically, my first question is, what are your goals for the coming few months? Like, what are you trying to achieve?
Who knows? I think that in my position, it's a bad idea to have goals beyond being consistent. My only goal is being consistent.
I mean, that's a good goal, right?
Yeah.
So in the next podcast, I'm just going to ask you, like, have you been consistent?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. If you have, then we'll set a new goal. We'll just keep going like that.
Well, it's like, I think that, you have to recognize when you're capable of progression and when you should just see whether progression happens. And, a lot of times when we talk about this, we come from a very narrow mindset that's always focused on progress as if there's nothing else going on in life. And
no, you're right.
Yeah. It's just a good perspective to have, like right now, I would like to build up this, whatever strength I can, but more than anything, I just want to move better. I want to get rid of some of the tension in my back. Sitting at screens and stuff has made me do some weird things. And, I'm just unlearning a lot of that and it's feeling really good, but, I'm pretty limited. I'm not trying to push anything too far. I'm just doing the things that don't cause any problems. I'm keeping it real simple. you know, and I actually did a roadcast on this a couple of days ago. I've got them on my hard drives, but they're not uploaded to the Dropbox yet. And one of the things that I was talking about is like, you know, I've had a 7-year layoff, basically. I haven't had any serious training in 7 years. I haven't trained at all in like at least 4 years. And so I've lost more strength than most people have gained. And I don't say that to brag. I'm saying that like it's something I have to realize, you know, and you can get tricked. Like I feel pretty good, you know, I feel a lot better than I did 3 weeks ago. But I'm not that much stronger, you know. It's still, I've only been doing it for 3 weeks. I can be really fooled by how I'm feeling and do too much, you know. So I take it real slow. I actually follow the same advice we give everybody else. I have a certain amount of things that I'm doing. I'm doing 2 sets, you know, right now in my workouts. When I feel like it's good to do 3 sets, I'll do 3 sets. But the goal here is to never do more than the plan calls for, but always be allowed to do less. And so technically I'm at a point where I would say it's okay to do 3 sets for sure, but it's only okay if there's no reason not to. And, you know, for most people who are young and healthy and don't have any issues, you should just scale that work up and it'll be fine. But for me, I do have issues. I have, you know, shoulder that I'm looking out for. I haven't worked out in a long time. You know, I find that because I'm under a lot of stress and I don't always get to eat as much as I want, you know, my recovery is not perfect, and I definitely have some sleep apnea, and, you know, that also impacts recovery. And I think that there are just a lot of small things that I'm aware of now, and I'm older. I'm going to be 39 in a month, you know, so just intrinsically.
You are.
Yeah.
You are, yeah.
I'm getting old, dude. I'm going to be 40 in a year. Are you kidding me?
Fuck me, man. Shit.
Yeah, I don't feel it, but which is nice.
Which is good.
Yeah. But and so, you know, I'm no longer, what I know now is at 39, and I knew this younger, but younger I wasn't old yet. I know that I'm in a place where I'm not going to conquer the world anymore. You know, and I didn't come close to achieving my, you know, peak potential. And who gives a shit? Like that. I don't have a time machine. I don't have a brain transplant machine. Like it's not going to work. So, you know, thinking about what I used to do is worthless, and all it can do is bring me down and make me make mistakes. And so really now I'm just taking it from the beginning and saying, all right, how would I do things if I was starting from scratch as a kid? And, you know, just adapting some of the scaling speed to my age, you know? So I'm just starting off with the basics and really, you know, going to like, you know, typically 1 rep in reserve, because I'm not doing a lot of volume. When you do low volume, you have to get closer to failure. And on my second set, I often do go to positive failure on the push-ups, not on the pull-ups. On the pull-ups, I go until I feel like there's a lot of eccentric stress, and I can just tell when it's enough. You know, I can tell when like, okay, well, if I do another one, I'm probably going to start running a risk of pulling something. And I know that I did plenty. I'm still at like, you know, 1 rep in reserve, but there's no point in me going to failure on this. I'm not ready for that yet. At some point, maybe I will be, but right now I'm not. And so I've seen really good results with that. And, you know, the other thing is like, you know, when we start looking at my results, 1, I've always responded to exercise faster than other people. 2, you know, this is what I look like without any, you know, it's, you know, this is baseline. Like
for the
this
people
is not normal. There are people who work out for years and have not built that kind of muscle.
For the people who are just listening and not watching, what we just witnessed was probably 100-inch bicep. So
no, man, they're not even 17 anymore.
They're not even 17. No, not even.
I don't think so.
17 is still huge, my friend.
They're small, but like, no, and that's the thing is that this is severe atrophy for me. And, you know, and you can even see how, like, even now, like I'm showing in the video, like, you know, I have pretty visible pronator teres and things like that. And these are like, you know, a quarter of the size that they were. I mean, my forearms.
Can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Next time we do a podcast, make sure you have measured your arms before we start.
Sure.
And then in a year we'll do that again, and we'll probably see.
I know that my chest measurement is like 46 inches, and it used to be 52.
And what about your max arm measurement?
My max arms ever was 18 and a half. That's when I was curling 205 pounds at 205 pounds.
Inch to centimeters.
Yeah, I was curling my body weight on a straight bar.
Dude, audience members, that's 47 centimeters for our European people. That's bigger than Sebastian.
No,
it's not. No, he's a 50
Sebastian's got like 20 inch arms.
No, wait.
He's huge. Yeah, but he's also 6'8". You know, like he's actually a giant.
He has 20 and a half, something like that.
Yeah, he's so big, it doesn't even make sense.
Right. So let's cover some questions from the audience members. You know, let's. I think this is a nice format where we just do some talking first, and then when we have time, cover some questions. So this question is by Edouard Caspersen, I think.
Okay.
And his question is regarding handstand push-ups. How to optimize your training for handstand push-ups other than doing Yaad leans, Yaad holds, and Pike push-ups? What can I do to get my strength up? Are Pike push-ups sufficient? What lifts carry over the best to handstand push-ups? I feel like the high incline bench press would carry over better than a straight overhead press because of the angle of pressing. Thank you, guys. I think that last point is definitely interesting because the angle is different in a handstand push-up. Because if you look at a handstand push-up, it's basically an incline bench press, and then you switch at the last range of motion, you switch to like an overhead press.
Exactly. Right. So really, most people are going to need the most work in the bottom half of the handstand push-up. So, you know, the headstand push-up is really the top half of the movement, and and really, you know, and we can break it apart, and it's going to be easier to see on video, but the thing to understand here is that what most people have problems with, and so there's a reason that when I look at free weights, if somebody was saying, you know what, I really just want to do body weight stuff, but I'm willing to do one upper body weight lift, I would have them do incline bench. And it's an easy choice. There's no question that's my one choice. And the reason is that the force angles are really, so if you look at what your arms are doing, so I'm sitting here sideways, if you're doing a bench press, it looks like a planche, but it's really not, because and it's kind of similar, but like with the bench, you know, and I'm instinctively doing like a planche form now. So like nobody benches like that.
You're doing, I was like, how do you bench, funny. Bro?
Like a moron, apparently. But here's the deal, right? So when you're benching and you're here and you're pressing up,
right?
This is not what's happening in planche at all. Nope. Now, and that does not make bench a bad exercise. It's actually an essential exercise for somebody who has like you know, goals of being a ring strength specialist. Like, it's the reason that almost all of them use the bench these days. And it's a reason that their performances are so much better than they were 20 years ago in terms of strength. So the but I do think they would actually be better off doing incline bench than flat bench. And the reason for that is that when you look at the force vectors, when you set up for an incline bench, and I'm just going to kind of manipulate myself a little here. So when I'm back, and this is a little bit of a high incline, but you know, if I'm, because this is about a, you know, right here is about a 45. When I'm here,
don't fall,
and I push up, now if I lost my headphones, but if I stand up, see now, all of a sudden, you know, you have to realize that if I'm here doing this, that my arms are actually coming down very similarly to where they're at in a pseudo planche push-up, or in a then if I keep my arms here and I just bring my back more like everybody does, now all of a sudden what I'm really doing is pushing here. Now that's the weakest part in a 90-degree push-up, but at the upper arm, it's actually much a more similar alignment to what you're doing in kind of like a wide, it's kind of like the middle portion of a pelican. And it's also very similar to kind of that Maltese positioning. Whereas in bench, when you're here, this is not really what you do in a Maltese. And it's really not what you're doing in a planche so much. So is it perfect? No. But it hits musculature that flat bench really doesn't hit. and as much, you know? So that's really where, and the other thing is that what I have found personally is that the shoulder blades tend to move more during the incline bench, and it's easier for them to move. And that's another thing that's much more similar to a planche push-up. But the big thing here is that the incline covers a fair portion of the strength that you need for planche, for Maltese, and for 90-degree push-ups. And it's one exercise. And it takes a long time to be able to do, you know, like high straddle planche push-ups for reps. Mm-hmm. You can get there eventually. And I think that when you get there, then, you know, maybe you can abandon the incline bench altogether for your strength cycles. Certainly for mass cycles, it's still something that's going to be of use for you. But, you know, there are definitely...
What do you mean with high straddle planche?
Yeah, so I
like
mean,
a high angle straddle planche?
Yeah. Where your back is at a 45-degree angle, and it stays that way. You don't lift up and you don't lift down. You just stay like this.
I've never done that.
Lift up. Yeah, I had a friend who used to do stuff like that, and
I should try.
Yeah, and it's just like an incline bench. It's exactly like an incline bench.
But doesn't your face hit the ground before?
Not if you're on parallettes.
Yeah, parallettes, that will work.
But even then, it's like it's basically like a headstand push-up. So, you know, if I get into the plane of the camera here and and say, like, you know, I'm here and I'm coming down and I'm doing my push-ups here, then by the time you're look at the position I'm at, where my hands are still in front of my face here. Okay, so look at the angles here. My elbows, my arms are like almost all the way back. They're not all the way back, but it's a pretty full range of motion. So it's it's really very different. Then it's much closer to a full range of motion, even on the ground, than a headstand push-up is. You're not losing as much. You're losing a little bit, but it's, you know, it's not that bad. And it's something you can do anywhere if you know how, you know, if you're strong enough and if you have the balance for it. So, you know, that's really where like the Yaad push-ups, you know, the leaning pike push-ups, stuff like that. Those are kind of like that. It's a little different because your body is moving off angle. You're pushing back. It's very difficult not to do that.
Those are more specific to handstand push-ups.
Right. And this is for, like, you know, I think that at some point it'll help to sort of make a kind of a focus series on handstand push-ups to kind of understand what's good. So for the weightlifting, you know, I think that I would use the weightlifting as supplementary volume if you're really interested in primarily learning the handstand push-ups. And so the first exercises that I would do, and you don't even have to do these in the same cycles, you know, you have to realize that you're building a base of strength. And so if you find that it's hard to do headstand push-ups with stomach to wall, because that's going to be the best variation for you to use for basic strength, is staying stomach to wall, having your hands maybe like, you know, a foot out from the wall and really getting down. It gets you a little bit more of an angle, and it's a little bit more similar to the exercise that I'm describing, but you got to be pretty strong to do that. So that's where you may want to do eccentrics there. And then, you know, so what I used to have people do is I would have them get in a corner. So instead of a stomach to wall, it's stomach to corner, because you can straddle your legs out so that you
that
can,
makes sense. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And this will make more sense on video for people who are not as good at turning words into images in your head. That's cool. We'll help you out.
Yeah.
But when you get into a straddle handstand, so get into a handstand in a corner, you're leaning back. If you spread your feet out, you can get perfectly vertical, right? Which is really important to remember. It's the same position so you can control the lean of your handstand with perfect balance that way. And it's a great, great, great tool that I honestly haven't ever seen anybody use. I just came up with it because I was troubleshooting with somebody back in the day. And so with
I was about to say, because there's a reason why I don't like stomach to wall handstand push-ups is because a lot of people don't have the proprioception, you know, in that movement, and they start arching because the feet are in the way, or they can't pike properly. And but you solve that problem with the corner thing.
Sometimes, basically, But here's the other problem that you solve. How do you come down? You know, if you're an inch, well, you can't move. You can't phase through the wall, right? But if you're in the corner and you just spread your feet, if you just straddle your legs out, you can get far enough out to where you can actually just come down into a kneeling position easily. You know, you can slide down through the corner and then you're fine. So
it's a good one, man.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. It's not something that I've really talked about, but that's like a practical solution to be able, because then what you can do is you can take your parallettes and you can basically do kind of like a foot assisted like negative for the headstand push-up all the way down into like a 90-degree push-up basically at the bottom. Once your head hits the ground, you can just sort of move into that low planche position, right? That bent arm planche. And now you're on the ground again and you take a rest and then you get up and you do it again and you just, you do them until you're done. You can, you're able to walk up the wall pretty easily that way because you're in you're far enough out to where you can just walk up the corner and then you just slowly, like, instead of walking up like this, you walk out with your feet. So that's what brings you the rest of the way vertical. And then you come down and then you just bring your feet together and it'll automatically pull you into that form. And then you just bend your legs for the rest of the way down. And it's a really, really kick-ass exercise that, I think there's a lot of things that really just, because I've been so busy, we haven't had time to teach and to use. And everybody has a corner, and that's the beautiful thing is that we want to focus on things everybody has, because that's really where we're going to have a lot of success, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I actually have to go in a bit. I think we covered a bunch of stuff. The cool thing is, guys, we're going to have a bunch more podcasts more frequently, and we'll even have focus series where we focus on certain things. We'll discuss that later in detail, but just keep an eye on our podcasts. And Josh, thanks a bunch. It was great, talking again.
Yeah, man.
We covered a lot of grounds. And do you have anything to say as a last message?
Oh man, I'm so bad at that.
I'm also bad at this, man. Shit.
Look,
I lost my touch.
Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Can't guarantee that we're going to make all the changes that you want to see, but we do want to hear from you so that we can, take all of your opinions into account as we continue moving forward. It's very hard to do an unplanned thing where we don't know what we're going to talk about and then give a really concise, coherent answer to certain questions. Like, what can I do for my handstand? Like, I don't really know what this person's doing. I haven't seen their form. There's so many questions. But as far as the approach, I think I would be starting off with basically, if I'm in a mass cycle, I wouldn't really worry about negatives. If I'm in a strength cycle, I would be doing some negatives. And then I would, Like I would start off with maybe 2 sets of like the best full ROM that I could use, whether that's like the headstand push up or like using, building up stacks of, plates or whatever you can do that's safe and won't slip out, adjustable parallettes. There's a lot of options, but, starting to add depth so we get that range of motion. And then I think that, if that's an issue, then really that's where free weights are your friend, and doing some high incline bench, like on a 45 degree, and then doing a, like even like a 30 degree incline is really nice. If you want the best carryover to a lot of different things, just focus on like the 30 degree incline bench and then Arnold press for overhead, because those two things are going to really cover most of, there's minimal gap left there. And that covers like the 2 ranges of motion that are the most difficult. Because your pseudo planche push-ups are going to cover the horizontal part. So if we do that, then, and then we have like, a 30-ish, 45-ish, whatever degree incline, we'd probably have to ask people what they think. I don't know that my shoulder is really in a position for me to be able to experiment with that, but I'll use an empty bar and see what I think. But basically covering the bottom third of the strength for the full headstand push-up. And that's where I really think that like the 45 degree is probably more specific to the handstand push-ups. For general strength, I'd go with like a 20 to 30 degree. And then do the Arnold press in both cases, because it's going to fill the gaps in either way. But if you have more of a focus on the handstand push-up, I think that being a little more specific with your choices is a good idea. So my final option at this point in time, would be that, you do like during the mass cycle, you do whatever you can do, for maybe like 2 sets with the body weight option. And then you use the free weights for maybe like, 2 or 3 more sets. And I wouldn't try to do shoulder press and incline on the same day. Honestly, certainly not the same volume. I would pick one day that's more vertical and one day that's more horizontal. The incline would be considered more horizontal. And that way you're not overworking everything, and make sure that you're not getting tired from week to week. You don't want to be getting wrecked. And that's about it, a lot of people want plug and play solutions, and the process is plug and play. Recognizing where you're weakest and working on those weak points while continuing to focus on your strength is the process that all success comes from. You cannot make your weak points into your strength if you have natural weak points. What you can do is build them up to the point where they no longer get in the way. And that's the right mindset to have. The other is just fighting against your nature, and that's stupid. It doesn't teach you anything except how to waste your own time. So, everybody is good at different things. And if you want to, you shouldn't expect that if you're inherently bad at squats, that you're one day going to set a world record. I'm not saying that you won't, you might, but I think that you really just ought to focus on making some improvements. And if you're really freaking good at deadlifts and bench, guess what? You're wasting your training time as a power lifter if you're trying to make all your gains in the squats until everything else is slowed down. There might be a point where you need to do that more, but that gets into strategic lifting later in a training lifetime, so to speak, when you've been more accomplished. Same thing with calisthenics. Set your goals, see what you're good at, see what you can accomplish, have one goal that speaks to your strengths so that you're always making good progress and you feel good about yourself. And then if another goal is more of a weak point, that's fine too. You just don't want to only focus on weak points, because then you're always going to be frustrated and it's not good for you.
All right, guys, you heard it from Joshua. Remember, you can always send your questions in the website if you're a member. And if you're interested in our app, just go to www.lepcofitness.com, and you'll see plenty more podcasts coming soon. Joshua, I want to thank you for this episode, and I'll see you around, man.
Yeah,
more
man,
episodes coming.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
glad
dude.
we had the time, and I will see y'all soon. Everybody have a great day. Work out hard, but not too hard. Use the app. Keep things under control. We'll be in touch. Until next time.
All right, guys. Till next time. Bye.